I always thought I had a solid marriage with Laura. We were together for over a decade, and I believed we had built a strong foundation of love and trust. We had our ups and downs like any couple, but overall it felt like we were a team, or at least that's what I kept telling myself. Recently, though, things had begun to feel off. I could sense a subtle shift in Laura's demeanor. She was often distracted, and I noticed she was more irritable than usual. I chalked it up to work stress. After all, she had been putting in long hours at her job. I wanted to be supportive, but deep down, a nagging feeling of unease settled in my gut. One evening, I came home early from work, looking to surprise Laura with dinner. As I entered our bedroom, I noticed something strange. The closet door was slightly ajar, and the light was on inside. I shrugged it off, thinking maybe she just left it on in a hurry. But when I went to close it, my eye caught a glimpse of something unusual, a small wooden lockbox tucked away on the shelf above her shoes. Curiosity got better of me, and I reached up to pull it down. The lock was old but gave way easily. I'd always kept a spare key around the house. As I opened the box, my heart sank like a stone. Inside were a stack of letters, love letters. Each envelope was neatly addressed to Laura, and the handwriting was not mine. My hands trembled as I fished them out, the words on the pages burning into my mind. Each letter was filled with sweet nothings, promises of love, and explicit details of sexual encounters. The dates on the letters were shockingly recent. I felt a whirlwind of emotions: anger, confusion, betrayal. I was in disbelief. I had seen her texting late at night, always turning her screen away from me, brushing off my questions about who she was talking to. How could she do this? My heart raced, and I was filled with a mix of rage and pain. I was about to confront her, but part of me needed to gather more evidence. I had to understand the extent of the betrayal. The following days felt like an eternity. I observed her closely, scrutinizing every interaction. Laura was definitely acting differently. She'd come home late several times, claiming work commitments or dinner with friends. I wanted to believe her, but the letters kept haunting my thoughts. Each time she smiled, I felt sick inside, knowing that smile might be for someone else. Finally, after what felt like the longest week of my life, I could no longer contain my fury. I needed to confront her, and I needed to do it now. That night, I waited for her to come home from what she claimed was a girls' night out. When she walked through the door, I was already standing in the living room, the lockbox on the coffee table between us. "Laura, we need to talk." My voice was steady, but my heart raced. Her expression shifted from surprise to confusion, and then to something I couldn't quite place. "What's going on? You look serious." I gestured to the box. We need to talk about this." She looked at it but didn't approach. "What is that?" "Open it, you tell me." As she approached hesitantly, I felt the tension in the room thicken. I watched her face as she opened the box, and her eyes widened in horror upon seeing the letters. "What the hell is this?" she gasped, her voice shaking. I demanded answers, and to my disbelief she started to spin a web of lies. "Those are old letters from a friend." "Old letters? Laura, they're dated last week. You think I'm that stupid?" The confrontation unfolded, and she tried to deflect, claiming it was all just a misunderstanding. She said I was overreacting, that I was imagining things because I was stressed. It was as if the woman I thought I knew had vanished, replaced by someone who could deny the reality right in front of her. At that moment, I felt a mix of anger and sorrow. I thought I knew this woman, but I realized I was standing in front of a stranger. The emotional impact hit me like a tidal wave, pushing me through a labyrinth of rage, sadness, and disbelief. I spent that night packing, trying to digest what had just happened. How could the person I chose to build my life with betray me so profoundly? I felt a darkness creeping in, threatening to swallow me whole. I never expected to be in this position, caught between love and betrayal. As I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I knew I had to make a decision. What would I do next? I had to think clearly and carefully. The light from outside cast shadows on the walls, mirroring the turmoil inside me. I felt lost, but one thing was clear: I needed to figure out a way forward. The thought of revenge crept into my mind. It was a dark idea, but the more I thought about it, the more it began to take shape. I was not going to let this go unanswered. I would make her feel the weight of her betrayal. I would not just be a victim. I would reclaim my power. After that night, my mind was racing with thoughts of revenge. As I lay there, I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. Laura had shattered the trust between us, and I felt a burning need to make her understand the pain she had caused. But how? I spent the next few days wrestling with my emotions, oscillating between anger and sadness. I couldn't focus on work. Every little thing reminded me of her. I had a few close friends who had always been my sounding board, and I decided it was time to confide in them. I met up with Mike, my best friend since college. He noticed something was off the moment I walked into the bar. With a low voice, I finally admitted, "Laura's cheating on me." The look on his face was a mixture of shock and sympathy. He leaned in closer, urging me to tell him the details. I recounted everything: the letters, the confrontation, her denials. Mike shook his head. "Man, I didn't think she'd be that type. You deserve better. Have you thought about what you want to do?" "I'm not sure yet. Part of me wants to confront her again, but I also want her to feel the weight of this. I want to make her pay," I confessed, my voice trembling with emotion. "Revenge can be sweet, but it can also backfire. Just be careful," he warned. "You don't want to end up doing something you'll regret." His words made me think. I didn't want to lose myself in this anger, but the thought of her moving on without consequence fueled my fire. I needed a plan, a way to expose her betrayal without losing my own sense of self-control. I started gathering information. I spent time observing Laura's behavior and piecing together her schedule. I texted her from time to time, pretending everything was normal, while I waited for the right moment to catch her. It was a bizarre game of cat and mouse, and I was determined to win. I knew she had been texting someone, and I was certain her phone held more evidence. So I devised a plan. One Saturday, I suggested we take a weekend trip to the cabin we owned in the woods. It was a place we had loved visiting for years, and I knew she would be excited about it. I figured it would be a good opportunity to create some distance from daily life, and maybe even catch her off guard. She agreed without hesitation, and for a moment I almost felt guilty for what I was planning. But that guilt was fleeting, quickly replaced by the certainty that I needed to know the truth. As we drove to the cabin, I could feel tension in the air. Laura chattered about how excited she was to spend time together, and I forced myself to engage in the conversation. Inside, I was a storm of emotions, anticipating the moment I would make my move. Once we arrived, I could see her relax, the weight of her deception temporarily lifted in the serene setting of the woods. That night, I had a plan. I casually mentioned that I'd forgotten my phone charger in the car, giving me an excuse to step outside. I grabbed my phone and pretended to search for the charger. Instead, I quickly texted a friend to find out if he could access Laura's phone records. I needed proof of her affair, something tangible that I could confront her with. As I walked back up to the cabin, I felt a mix of dread and anticipation. What if I found something even worse than I imagined? The thought sent shivers down my spine, but I couldn't back down now. I had come too far to turn back. After dinner, I suggested we watch a movie. I set up my laptop on the coffee table and pretended to search for a film. My heart raced as I created a distraction. The whole time, I kept one eye on Laura, studying her reactions. She seemed blissfully unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface. Then, as the movie played, I made my move. I casually remarked, "You know, I've been thinking about how important it is to communicate in a relationship. I feel like we've been a bit distant lately." I could see her tense up slightly, but I kept my tone light. "Yeah, I guess it's just been busy, you know," she replied, her eyes glued to the screen. "Busy, huh? I get that. But there shouldn't be any secrets between us, right?" I probed, watching her carefully. Laura glanced at me, a flicker of unease crossing her face. "Of course not. What do you mean?" I leaned back, feigning indifference. "Just making sure we're on the same page." The evening dragged on, but I didn't let up. I felt like I was playing a high-stakes poker game, and I was determined to keep my cards close to my chest. The tension between us increased, and I could sense she was becoming increasingly anxious. I could almost see her mind racing, trying to predict my next move. The night passed into silence, and as we prepared for bed, I felt a rush of adrenaline. I had set the stage perfectly, and now it was just a matter of time before I confronted her with the truth. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of my plan pressing down on me. A part of me still wanted to salvage our marriage, but the other part craved justice. I had to remind myself that this was about reclaiming my power, and I would stop at nothing to ensure she knew the gravity of her betrayal. Little did I know that the next few days would unravel in ways I never anticipated. The morning light filtered through the windows of the cabin, casting a warm glow over everything. But instead of feeling comforted by the tranquil surroundings, I felt a knot tightening in my stomach. I had spent the entire night wrestling with my thoughts, and now the moment of truth loomed just ahead. I needed to confront Laura, but I had to do it carefully, just right. After breakfast, we decided to go for a hike. The woods were beautiful, and the fresh air was invigorating, but my mind was elsewhere. I was mentally preparing myself for the confrontation. I kept glancing at her, noticing how carefree she seemed, completely oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. She laughed at the birds and marveled at the trees, and I couldn't help but feel a mixture of love and resentment. How could she smile when she had so blatantly betrayed me? Once we returned from the hike and settled back at the cabin, I knew it was time. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was about to unfold. I decided to approach her in a way that would catch her off guard. Instead of a direct accusation, I would lead her into a conversation that would reveal her guilt. "Laura," I began, keeping my tone casual as we sat on the couch together. "You know I've been feeling a bit off lately. It's like something changed between us, and I can't quite put my finger on it." I studied her face for any signs of a breakdown. "What do you mean?" she asked, her brow furrowing slightly. "It just feels like there are all these secrets. I mean, I don't want to accuse you of anything, but I saw something that really upset me and I just want to understand," I said, allowing a slight tremor to invade my voice. "What did you see?" she replied, her defenses immediately rising. The tension thickened in the room and I took a moment before responding. "It's not about seeing something. It's more about feeling it, you know. Like when you're just too distracted to notice the person sitting next to you." Her eyes flicked towards the box on the coffee table and I could see the panic rising within her. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Laura, I found the letters," I said, my voice steady but my heart racing. "The love letters, they were in the lockbox in your closet." Her face drained of color, the shock evident as she stammered, "What? I didn't let her finish." "Don't lie to me, Laura. Don't try to spin this into something it's not. I read them, I know. I can't believe you would betray me like this." The tears welled in her eyes as she fought to regain control. "It's not what you think. I can." Explain what? How you've given your heart to someone else, how you've been lying to me for months." I interrupted, feeling the anger boil over. "Please just listen," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "Those letters, they're not what you think. It's complicated. I was just lonely. You've been so absorbed in work and I felt neglected." Her excuses poured out, but they fell flat on my ears. I had been working hard to provide for us, to build a future, and she was using that as justification for her infidelity. "So you thought it was okay to open your legs for someone else? You think that's justifiable?" "No, I made a mistake," she yelled, her voice echoing around the small cabin. "I didn't mean for it to happen. Didn't mean for it to happen." I shot back incredulously. "You didn't fall into bed with someone by accident, Laura. This was a choice you made." I realized I was shouting and I tried to rein in my emotions, but it felt like a dam had burst. "How long has this been going on?" I demanded. "Just a few months." She admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "I thought it was just a fling. I didn't want to hurt you. Do you think that makes it better?" I spat, my voice shaking with rage. "You thought you could keep this a secret and it would just go away? You think I wouldn't find out?" She buried her face in her hands, sobbing. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I didn't want it to happen. I love you, I really do. Please believe me." For a moment my heart wavered. The tears and the sorrow tugged at my chest, but I couldn't let her manipulation cloud my judgment anymore. "You don't get to use love as an excuse for betrayal. You've crushed any trust we had left. I don't know if I can ever see you the same way again." Laura tried to reach for my hand, but I pulled away. "This isn't something we can just fix with a few words. You've shattered my heart, and it's going to take more than just apologies to put it back together." I felt a mix of triumph and grief. I had confronted her, exposed the betrayal, and now it was all out in the open. But instead of feeling empowered, I felt empty. I had wanted her to feel the weight of her actions, but the truth was, I was the one carrying the burden now. As the sun set outside the cabin and the shadows grew long, I realized that this was just the beginning of a long, painful journey. I wasn't ready to decide if we could salvage our relationship, but I knew one thing: I would not let her get away with this. I had to reclaim my power and navigate my way through the heartbreak. Little did I know, the days ahead would bring even more surprises and revelations, and I was about to enter the next phase of my emotional turmoil. The fallout from the confrontation left the cabin heavy with tension. Laura cried in silence while I paced back and forth, my mind racing with conflicting thoughts. I had opened the door to a reality I had never wanted to face, and now that it was all laid bare, I felt lost. I knew I had to make a decision, but I was paralyzed by the weight of my emotions. That night we went to bed without saying another word. I lay on my side, staring at the wall while she quietly sobbed into her pillow. I felt a flicker of guilt, but it was quickly overshadowed by the anger and betrayal swirling in my chest. I couldn't shake the thought of her with someone else, the intimate moments they shared while I was oblivious. When I woke up the next morning, Laura was already up. The silence between us was deafening, filled with unspoken words and unvoiced accusations. I wanted to scream and demand answers, but I also felt drained from the emotional turmoil of the previous day. Instead, I decided to keep my distance and focus on what I needed to do next. I spent the day avoiding her, trying to collect my thoughts. I took a long walk through the woods, hoping the fresh air would clear my head. I thought about my options. Should I confront the other man? Should I dig deeper and find out more about Laura's affair? Or should I simply walk away and try to salvage what was left of my dignity? As I walked, I felt a sense of clarity wash over me. I realized I needed to take control of the situation. I was tired of being the one left in the dark while she played the victim. It was time to gather more evidence to confront this head-on. I needed to find out who this person was and what they meant to Laura. Returning to the cabin, I found her sitting on the porch, her eyes red and puffy from crying. I took a deep breath before I spoke. "I need to know who he is, Laura. I need a name." She looked up at me, her expression a mix of fear and defiance. "Why does it matter? I made a mistake. Because I deserve to know. I deserve to know who has been taking my place while I've been here working for us." I snapped, my patience wearing thin. "I don't want to tell you," she replied, her voice shaking. "It was just a fling. It meant nothing." "Then tell me. If it meant nothing, you should have no problem saying his name," I pressed, feeling a surge of adrenaline. "I can't," she shouted, her voice breaking. "I can't because I'm ashamed. I never wanted to hurt you, I swear. It just happened, and now I wish it hadn't, but I can't take it back." Her desperation pulled at me, but I remained resolute. "You need to understand that this is not just going to disappear. I can't just pretend everything is fine. You've destroyed our relationship, and I need answers." After several moments of silence, she finally relented. "His name is Brad. He works in my office. It was just a stupid mistake, and I didn't mean for it to go this far. I promise I'll end it. I'll fix this." Brad, the name echoed in my mind, and I felt my blood boil. I didn't know this man, but I suddenly felt like I needed to know everything about him. The thought of him being with Laura made my skin crawl. "Fix this," I said incredulously. "You think it's that simple? You've already crossed a line that can't be uncrossed." I needed a plan, and I needed one quickly. I decided to take matters into my own hands. I began researching everything I could about Brad. I spent hours online, digging into his social media, checking public records and trying to piece together his life. What I found only fueled my anger. He seemed like a successful guy, charming and confident. I couldn't help but feel like a fool, standing in the shadows while he swept Laura off her feet. As evening approached, I felt a sense of determination surge within me. I had to confront this head-on. I wasn't going to be the victim in this story. I would expose Brad for what he was, a homewrecker who had taken advantage of my trust. I made a decision: I would find him and confront him. It was time to show him that he couldn't just waltz into my life and steal my wife. I turned to Laura, who was still sitting in silence, staring at the ground. "I'm going to find him." "What? No, you ca," she exclaimed, panic filling her voice. "Please don't do this. It'll only make things worse." No, Laura, I need to do this. You gave me the name. Now I need to know the man who stole my wife's heart. I won't let him get away without understanding the consequences of what he's done. I spent that night plotting my next move. I planned to go to her office the next day, wait for him to leave and confront him in person. I knew it was risky, but I felt a fire inside me, a need for justice. I wouldn't let this betrayal go unanswered. The next morning I dressed carefully, knowing I needed to look composed, even if my emotions were in turmoil. I drove to Laura's office, my heart racing as I approached the building. I took a deep breath and steeled myself for what was about to happen. When I arrived, I waited outside, packing the sidewalk, my mind racing with the confrontation that was about to unfold. I couldn't help but imagine the look on Brad's face when he realized who I was. I was ready to unleash the storm that had been brewing within me. As I stood there, I felt a mixture of fear and determination. I had come this far, and now I needed to see this through. I wouldn't let Laura's betrayal define me. I would confront this head-on and reclaim my power. It was time to face the man who had taken everything from me. Whether it ended in confrontation or chaos, I was ready for whatever came next. As I stood outside Laura's office building, the adrenaline coursed through my veins. The anticipation felt electric, but a part of me also wondered if I was making a huge mistake. Would confronting Brad really bring me the closure I sought, or would it only complicate things further? I tried to shake off the doubt. I had to do this. I couldn't allow myself to feel powerless any longer. After what felt like an eternity, I spotted him. Brad walked out of the office, casual and confident, a smug grin plastered across his face. He didn't realize that his world was about to come crashing down. I took a deep breath and stepped forward, my heart pounding in my chest. As I approached him, he looked up, and the smile faded from his face as he registered my presence. "Who the hell are you?" he asked, his expression shifting to confusion. "I'm Mark, Laura's husband," I said, my voice steady but filled with an underlying fury. "We need to talk." He laughed, a dismissive sound that only fueled my anger. "Oh, so you're the guy," she told me. "All about you. I didn't think you'd actually come to confront me." I took a step closer, trying to control my temper. "You think this is a joke? You've been sleeping with my wife, and I want to know how you could do that." His bravado faltered for a moment, and I could see the wheels turning in his mind. "It was just a fling, man. It didn't mean anything. Laura and I didn't mean anything," I interrupted. "You took her away from me. You deceived both of us. How do you sleep at night?" Brad's expression changed, a mixture of annoyance and defensiveness. "Look, I didn't force her into anything. She made her choices." "Choices? You think seducing a married woman is a choice you can just shrug off? You destroyed my life." My voice rose, drawing the attention of passers-by. I felt exposed, but I didn't care. I needed him to understand the gravity of his actions. "You really think this is all on me?" He shot back, his tone shifting from defensive to accusatory. "Maybe you should have paid more attention to your wife, instead of burying yourself in work." His words cut deeper than I expected. They struck a nerve, exposing my own insecurities. I had poured myself into my job, believing it was for us, but now I saw how easily that could be twisted against me. Still, I couldn't let him get to me. I had to stay focused on the confrontation. "Laura's security doesn't justify your actions. You think she's just going to forget the man she's married to because you whispered sweet nothings. You're nothing but a coward hiding behind her." I stepped closer, my fists clenched at my sides. "I want you to know that I'm not going to let you get away with this." Brad looked taken aback, but then he squared his shoulders, his own anger surfacing. "You don't scare me. If Laura wanted me, she wouldn't be with you. You clearly don't deserve her." I felt a surge of rage at his arrogance. "You think you can just waltz into someone's life and take whatever you want? You'll regret this, trust me." I turned to walk away, but not before adding, "You might have her now, but the truth will come out. She won't be with you forever." As I walked away, a mix of triumph and defeat swirled inside me. I had confronted Brad, and while I hadn't achieved the closure I'd hoped for, I felt empowered in that moment. I had taken control and faced the man who had invaded my life. Yet the victory felt hollow. When I returned to the cabin, Laura was waiting for me, anxiety etched across her face. "Mark, what happened? Are you okay?" I didn't answer immediately. I could see the guilt in her eyes, and I wondered what she had imagined would transpire. I talked to Brad, I finally said, my voice cold. What did he say? She asked, her voice trembling. I could feel the tension in the air as I recounted the confrontation, watching her reaction closely. He thinks this is just a game, Laura. He thinks he can have you without any consequences, I said, my tone laced with bitterness. And you let him think that? I didn't let him think anything, she exclaimed, frustration creeping into her voice. I didn't want any of this to happen. It's too late for that, I shot back, feeling the anger surge anew. You've already made your choices, now you have to deal with the aftermath. The silence stretched between us, thick with tension. I could see her struggling to find the right words, but I didn't want to hear any more excuses. What do you want from me? She finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I want you to understand the damage you've done, Laura. You need to think about what you really want. If you want to salvage this, then you need to prove it. I can't just forget what you've done. She nodded slowly, tears brimming in her eyes. I know I need to do better. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this, I promise. I wasn't convinced. The assurance felt empty, and I struggled to understand if it was even possible to repair our relationship after everything. Trust was a fragile thing, and Laura had shattered it in a matter of months. As night fell, I found myself lost in thought, wondering if I could ever truly forgive her. Each moment since discovering the betrayal weighed heavily on my heart. I had hoped this confrontation would bring clarity, but instead I felt more confused than ever. The path ahead was uncertain. I had to decide whether I could rebuild what was broken or if it was time to let go. I felt trapped in a web of emotions that was suffocating, and despite the confrontation with Brad, I knew the real battle was just beginning. It would require both of us to work tirelessly to find a way forward, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this might be the beginning of the end. The days that followed were a blur of emotions. I felt like I was on a roller coaster, with moments of anger, sadness, and brief flickers of hope. Laura was determined to prove her commitment to our marriage, but rebuilding trust was not something that would happen overnight. I kept thinking about Brad's words, how he had brushed aside my feelings as if they were inconsequential. We tried to communicate more openly, but the shadow of her betrayal loomed large. Laura agreed to counseling, believing that a professional could help us navigate the wreckage of our relationship. I hesitated, unsure if I was ready to dive into that vulnerability, but I also recognized that I needed support. It was time to face the reality of what had happened, and I could no longer pretend that everything was fine. Our first counseling session was awkward. We sat across from the therapist, unable to meet each other's eyes. I felt exposed, like we were peeling back layers of our life that I wasn't sure I wanted to reveal. But as the session progressed, I began to see how broken we both were. Laura poured out her guilt and regret, expressing her deep remorse for what she had done. I watched the tears flow down her cheeks and felt a twinge of empathy, but anger still simmered beneath the surface. I don't want to lose you, Laura said, her voice cracking. I realize now how much I took for granted. I'm ready to fight for us. Hearing her words was bittersweet. I wanted to believe her, but I also wondered if her resolve would hold when the guilt faded. I wanted to know that she was genuinely committed to repairing the damage, but trust is hard to rebuild once it's shattered. As weeks passed, I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt. We had more sessions, and slowly I began to see glimpses of the woman I fell in love with, the one who laughed at my terrible jokes and made my heart soar. There were moments when I felt warmth between us, moments that reminded me of the connection we once shared. But then the reality of what she had done would hit me like a freight train, and I'd feel that familiar sadness wash over me. The more time we spent together, the more I realized that I couldn't erase what had happened. Laura needed to understand that her actions had consequences, not just for me but for our entire future. I had to set boundaries and I had to be firm. I made it clear that while I was willing to work on our marriage, I wouldn't tolerate any more dishonesty. If she wanted to move forward, she had to cut all ties with Brad. Laura agreed, and for a moment I felt a sense of hope. She told me that she had ended things with him, that she had apologized for the hurt she had caused. I wanted to believe her, but the fear of it all happening again gnawed at me. It was during one of our counseling sessions that I realized something crucial. The therapist asked us to envision our relationship in the future. What did we want? I thought about it deeply and realized that I wanted more than just a patched-up marriage. I wanted to feel safe again, to know I could trust Laura with my heart. But I also needed to consider my own happiness. After a long week of reflecting, I made a decision. I called Laura to meet at our favorite cafe, a place that held many good memories. As she walked through the door, I felt a rush of nostalgia. I had to remind myself that while we had shared beautiful moments, we were now standing on shaky ground. Laura, I started, looking her in the eyes. I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I want you to know that I'm willing to work on our marriage. But I need to be clear. I have to protect myself, too. If I can't trust you, I can't stay. Her face fell, and I could see the weight of my words settling in. I understand, Mark. I know this is on me. I'll do everything I can to earn back your trust. I nodded, feeling the gravity of what lay ahead. I want us to have a future together, but it has to be built on honesty and communication. If we can't do that, then I think it's best to separate. Tears brimmed in her eyes, and I felt a pang of compassion. I know I messed up. I'm so sorry for everything. I'll work on myself, I promise. And in that moment, with the sun filtering through the cafe's windows, I felt a flicker of hope. We weren't out of the woods yet, but I was willing to take that step forward, one cautious inch at a time. Over the next few months, we worked tirelessly to rebuild our relationship. We continued counseling and engaged in open discussions about our feelings. I learned to express my fears and frustrations, and Laura opened up about her vulnerabilities. It was a long, painful process, but we began to heal. Slowly but surely, I found myself laughing again, even through the pain. I began to see the small victories, moments where Laura would share her phone passcode without hesitation, or when she would surprise me with a thoughtful gesture. Each step forward felt like a testament to our efforts, but I also learned to trust myself. I left room for doubt, knowing that while I wanted our marriage to succeed, my happiness had to come first. In the end, I realized that the most important relationship I could nurture was the one I had with myself. While Laura and I were still navigating the aftermath of her betrayal, I knew we had a long journey ahead. But I was determined to not let this define me. I had learned valuable lessons about trust, vulnerability, and resilience. Whatever the future held, I was ready to face it, with or without Laura. As I sat with her at that cafe, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. There would be challenges ahead, but I was stronger now, and I was no longer afraid to reclaim my power. The journey might have started with betrayal, but it would end with newfound strength.